Hi everyone, my name is Moni.
And I'm Naveen from Before You Play.
And welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Board Games, where we pretty much review a few board games in one episode.
Yes, so today we are going to be talking about expansions primarily. We have played a lot of them over the past several weeks, and we finally have enough to talk about all of them in one episode.
I feel like we have been playing them over the past year. because
Sure.
Some of them are new and some of them are old, like within the past year and a half they've been released. The new ones, we do have a couple of ones that are releasing actually at Gen Con,
Right.
and so we'll let you know which ones those are. But before we get into those expansions, we do have a couple of things to mention. Namely, if you enjoy watching our channel because of gameplay videos, there are a couple of them that we participated in on other channels in recent weeks. The first one is a gameplay of Gutenberg. That is a Portal Games game, and that's over on Watch It Played.
Yep.
We've included links to those gameplays in the description below if you'd like to check them out. And the other one is one that only I'm in.
Yes.
I visited a friend, Tim Chwan, who's another content creator, and we filmed a gameplay video of Aquatica, which is a game that Tim so graciously taught me right before we played it.
Yeah.
And I quite enjoyed playing that game. It has a really cute theme, a really interesting theme.
It's a quicker one, right?
I would say
Relatively
so.
quick, yeah.
And so again, a link to that gameplay video is in the description below. Please check it out because Tim is such a wonderful person. All right, so on to these expansions. Are you
Yes.
ready?
Let's do it.
All right, so starting with the first one. This is one that we just wanted to briefly mention because it was actually an expansion that was released last year for a game that we know that a lot of people who follow our channel really love. And so it is...
Yes, it is the expansion to a game called Parks.
Yes.
This is the Nightfall expansion. This is one of two expansions.
Well, this is the first one
right.
that was released last year, and the
Yes.
second one is going to release, I believe, at Gen Con. Wildlife? I think it's called Wildlife.
Wildlife expansion. Yes, so this one is designed by Matux Schuler, and this one adds a couple more elements, like most expansions do to games. This adds campsites,
so.
as well as a couple more wildlife tokens and more cards as well.
Yes, I believe the original game was missing 17 parks in terms of the parks cards. And so those cards come in this game. And of course, it's all the same really, really beautiful, gorgeous artwork,
nice artwork,
that people love from the base game. It also does add a little bit more in terms of strategic depth because of the campsites. So you have these tent tokens that are placed above certain areas of the trail. And anytime you get to those tent tokens, you can either choose to take the action of the original spot, or you can go down to the campsite where there are going to be 3 face-up campsites, and you can just choose one of those to take that action. So for people who love this game for its simplicity, it does add that just slight extra layer of complexity, but not by much.
Nothing too much, yeah.
Nothing too intense. And that's about it. We know that there are a lot of people on our channel who really love parks. We see that in the comments. And so if you're interested in checking that out, again, there is a second expansion coming at Gen Con.
Yep. So this is the Nightfall expansion published by Keymaster Games. And I think this is the oldest one that we had
Yes,
from
I think
what
so.
we played from the past couple months.
Yeah. All right, next expansion is for a 2-player only game that we both really love. And it is...
Yes, it's the expansion for Targi. I think it's called just Targi the Expansion,
Yeah,
which
it is,
awesome.
isn't it?
Designed by
Expansion.
Andreas Steiger, and it's published by Cosmos Games. It's still a 2-player only game, and technically this is the oldest expansion, not Parks. It's just we played Parks
yes.
before we played the Targi expansion.
Right.
Yes, so this one adds a whole new element of water and a couple different cards to the game.
Yeah, it adds sand dunes, and it also adds another figure called the Targia figure, who's going to be walking around the perimeter of the gaming space if you played the original game before, but in the opposite direction as a robber.
Yes.
This expansion, in my opinion, adds a lot to the gameplay because the Targia that's walking around the border, whenever you place your token wherever the Targia is, in addition to that, the actions that you just generally get to take just from the standard base game rules, you also get to take the action of the Targia,
Right.
which is basically gaining additional resources. And so it just gets you more ways of gaining more resources, which if you played the base game before is really, really needed
need
throughout
'em.
the game.
Yeah.
The water is also another way in which you can gain more resources. You can always discard 2 water to take a goods token, right? So it's kind of like a wild of sorts.
Yeah.
And I think you can discard 3
3 for
water to
gold.
take a gold, which
Yes,
is
when it's needed.
hard to get. Yeah.
Yeah, so because of this new element of water, it's a completely new set of cards that you're going to lay out. You're not going to use the base game cards. So you
Yes.
basically have 2 modes of play. You can either play the base game, obviously, or you can play the expansion mode. You're not going to mix and match cards and kind of shuffle them all together.
Yeah, it's I think the goods cards you still use those, but yeah, the tribes cards are all completely different, as well as the border cards. And we briefly mentioned the sand dunes, but those are additional cards that basically let you take those actions. They're quite strong. So instead of placing your token on the main board the way that you do, you can instead place it on one of the sand dune cards and take that action.
Yeah, so if you play Targi, you know that you kind of want to set yourself up, or you're trying to set yourself up for the intersections, but maybe I set myself up here, and plan A was to place my other piece somewhere else, but Monique blocked me, then I can say, okay, forget plan A. Instead of using that piece there, I'm going to put it on a sand dune to get the benefits that are there. Or you might just identify like, oh man, I really need that right now.
Because it's strong.
And I'll just place it right there.
Yeah, so it does give you less tokens on the actual board for you to do that intersection thing. But like Naveen was mentioning, sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes I find myself just, I guess I'll place my token here. It's like the only other legal space.
Yeah, sometimes like if you're last to act, it's like I literally have to put it here because the robber's here, the intersections are there, and that's all I get. So now you have that element of the sand dunes.
So in general, I think that this is a fantastic expansion. I would probably play with it always.
Like I said, it's like you have like almost like two games in one. It's like the two systems like to play. You can play the base or this one.
I feel like we're slightly split on that. I think Naveen is a little bit more like, yeah, I guess sometimes I'll play the base game without this. And for me, I'm like, I would just play it with this all the time.
This mode you like.
It's just so much more flexible, I feel. And I don't know. I think it just adds a lot more to the strategy and just the experience in general.
That's fair.
But out of all of the elements that this game comes with, surprisingly, I use the sand dunes the least.
I think I used the sand dunes
more than I do, but I'm just not opening my horizons to these new strategic elements.
Maybe next time. I mean, well, you said you only want to play with the expansion, so maybe you will. Yeah,
that's true.
Anyway, that is the Targi expansion.
Yes, that is Targi the expansion.
Oh, well, yes, that's right.
All right, so the next expansion is two expansions actually for the same base game. So we're getting a twofer here.
Yes.
It's for one of our favorite dexterity games.
Yes, this is for Rush MD. We have the maternity and dental.
Yes.
And then we have the ICU expansion as well. So let's put both out here. This is designed by Konstantinos Kakinis as well as David Turksey, and it's published by Artipia Games.
Yes.
Monique and I have done a playthrough of this game, the base game, on our channel. So if you are interested in that, we will leave a link up here so you can check it out.
I think we've done playthroughs of a majority of the base games that we're covering. We definitely did one for Targi. And I don't think we did one for Parks. We have one for Trails, which is a totally different game.
Yes.
So I don't even know why I mentioned that.
Sure.
But yes, we did one for Rush MD. If you're not familiar with that game, it is basically a real-time hospital game.
Simulator,
where you're trying to treat patients, and it's madness. I thought we would do better than we did. I guess, spoiler.
It's a real-time dexterity game where the board is kind of modular, where you can set up different wings of the hospital. There's areas to run labs. There's areas to admit different patients. You can operate on them in different ways. And so the main mechanism is you have these different sand timers that go into these different locations. And in order to perform an action in that location, you have to place a sand timer there, and you cannot touch that sand timer until the sand is completely run out.
Yes.
So you are all hands on deck trying to manage your sand timers.
All over the hospital.
Yes, and these expansions just add more and more and more stuff to do.
Yes. Yeah. So just really briefly, the modular aspect, it's not modular in the sense that you can choose which boards to play with. It's just in the sense that you can arrange your hospital in whatever way is going to benefit you the most.
That is the base game. This technically becomes modular because you can add certain things in or not.
So for these two expansions, this is the main expansion.
This is the bigger one.
The ICU one.
Yep.
And then this one is kind of like an extra one that adds a maternity and dental clinic. So I guess let's talk about this one first because it's the smaller one of the two.
Yes.
So this adds two new treatment types, I suppose, and patient types. So you have two patients that are going to go into the outpatient deck, and that's going to be the dental patients as well as maternity patients who are just going there for basically like prenatal care. And then you also have the inpatient maternity patients who are going in for, a lot of them require surgery, so I'm assuming these are C-sections.
C-sections maybe, yeah.
And a lot of the maternity aspect has to do with just figuring out the gender of the baby or just like which baby they're going to be giving birth to.
Right.
The dental clinic specifically is basically whenever you see a patient come out who needs dental work, you go to the new board and there is this mouth as well as these 6 teeth. You have to roll the 6 teeth like dice, and then with your tweezers, you got to position them in the mouth with all the dark side of the teeth face down.
All the whites, pearly whites are face up, dark sides are down. So the reason why you roll it is just to create chaos, so you can't just predict like I'm gonna pick these up very easily.
Yeah, they always have to start on the table.
Yeah, and sometimes you're gonna bring the tweezers in at awkward angles and be like, why did I come in at this angle? And then so you're just buying yourself time, you know, or like you're spending your time trying to manage these patients.
So it's a new dexterity element, and you're gonna see more dexterity elements in this one, but that's how the dental one works. I am awful at putting the teeth in the mouth for some reason. I was like, this is impossible, and then Naveen did it in like 10 seconds. So maybe it's just
me. All about how you're planning on, okay, that's how it's laying. I need to make sure that what's the end result. I need to get it so that the black is down. So I need to come in at an angle that makes it so I just flip real quick and
Naveen, expert advice for putting teeth in mouth.
Because I think from what I saw you doing when you were doing it, you would just come from the top and just pick up and then be like, now I'm in this position. How am I going to get this?
I can't do it.
Yeah.
So that's the dental clinic. The maternity clinic is a little bit more complicated. The outpatient ones are fine. One of the maternity procedures requires you to do an ultrasound. And so it's this new technology thing where you have like a red circular transparency almost, and you kind of put it over the card, but you're looking for these like traditional gender symbols, right? And you're kind of looking for as many of them as you can, because sometimes there's more than one, sometimes there's two on the card.
Sometimes there might be twins if you see two of them. So
and you have to take those tokens and place it in the bed, and you don't actually reveal the card until the end of the round. So you got to make sure you're right.
That's right.
And that bit was actually really hard, because if you look at the little patterns on the back of the card, they all look the same.
They do, yeah.
I remember you were pretty confident in it.
I was like, oh, it's just a single girl. It's like twin girls.
You did it. You're completely wrong. That's that. There's also another one where you're kind of basically counting the teddy bears on the back of a card and trying to see which kind of teddy bear has the majority of it, and you're matching that with the patient who's in the bed.
It sounds super easy. It's like there's only white and brown teddy bears, but they're like off by just one. Like there might be 7 white and 8 brown, and you're just like, in that rush, you're just like, oh, I think there's more white, because they come in different sizes. So your mind starts playing tricks on you.
Yeah. So there's that bit. Then you're basically like flipping over the babies that are face down and looking for the exact one, like down to like the hair and the facial features, the facial expression. I would say thematically, this expansion is funny. It makes it hard because the inpatient maternity patients are like a 2-step process. You bring them in, you bring them to this board, and then you eventually have to bring them to surgery. So unlike the other kind of inpatient patients from the base game, the maternity patients are a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, they can be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will say though, you're still deciding how many patients to flip up at the very beginning. If you're familiar with the base game, so it's not like, oh my gosh, now I have to still deal with the patient load that we had in the original base game.
Yeah, it's still
you
the same
can still
number.
Decide. It's just more tasks that you have to keep in mind and be aware of and cognizant of.
That's going to be the biggest challenge with any of these expansions. It's just you have to remember what everything does and where everything is and what everything means, right? And
doctors can perform certain things only. Nurses can perform things.
Exactly. And when you flip over a patient card, even though it's the same amount of patients that you're treating, when you flip one over, you can't just like, well, I don't want to do that one and skip to the next one. Like you're required
now
to
deal with this teeth.
If you pull a maternity patient, you got to go do this, right?
Yep.
So that's maternity and dental. The ICU is intense. This is quite the expansion.
This is.
If you like Rush MD for its chaos, this is what you want to play with, because it is chaos when you combine this. I would not recommend combining both of these together unless you want just like the most massive hospital experience. I mean, in a regular hospital setting, it's not like if we're doing this 2-player, it's not like in a regular hospital setting, it's only 2 people who are doing all these things, right?
Right.
That's why you have like medical teams.
Yeah.
But when you put these expansions together with the base game, this is quite a big hospital now. So you gotta have a lot of table space.
I would move the chairs out of the way.
Stand up, right, and make sure you can reach. So for anybody who has difficulty reaching, which is something that we have encountered recently, this might not be a viable game for you, because it does require a lot of reaching, especially now that the hospital is so big.
Right.
So specifically in the ICU expansion, you have an ICU department. And so for people who are not familiar with these terms, it's an intensive care unit. They're usually the most sick of all the patients.
Right.
And so the new kind of thing about that is when you pull these patients from the hospitalized deck, this expansion doesn't come with any outpatient cards, by the way.
Right.
So whenever you pull those patients, you have to admit them directly into the ICU and then stabilize them by doing whatever it says on the card, whether that be an IV drip medication that you now have to hang on an IV pole and like infuse into the bed, or whatever else it says, defibrillate the patient, which is a funny thing too, because you put the defib pads on the bed, you yell clear, and everybody has to raise their hands.
Yeah.
So thematically, it's hilarious. But once the patient is stabilized, then they get moved into the regular ward, just like the other inpatient patients.
Yep.
So just like some of the maternity patients, that is also an extra step, which means these patients just take more effort for you to earn those points. In addition to that, there are also 4 new procedures, or sorry, I guess there are 4 new exams. You have a urinalysis, which is another one of those. You kind of flip each one up.
You're just trying to match letters, by what's needed on the patient.
You have a CT scan, which we're both very lukewarm about.
Yes, the CT scan, it's like this balancing thing that you have to do. You have to place a doctor on it and
you have to hold it up
there the whole time.
With one hand.
It basically occupies your one hand, so all you can do is operate with your other hand.
Exactly.
And if you tip it over, you have to flip it over and start all over again. So
there's also allergy testing, which thematically I have the biggest problem with because it's supposed to be like for autoimmune. I thought that was a strange thematic decision.
It's just another dexterity thing with tweezers that you have to do.
That is quite a dexterity part because you have to stack tokens. And then the last one is the EKG, which is probably my favorite one besides the defib machine, where you have to just put the EKG tokens in proper pattern order, which I thought that was funny.
So there's like a little stack of 4, like A, B, C, and D, and each one looks so similar, like just quickly when you look at it, and you're supposed to match the EKG symbols that you see in that chart in the right order.
Yeah.
And if you accidentally have your EKG tokens upside down, it could really throw you off. So you got to make sure A, B, C, and D are facing you the proper way.
So that's pretty much it. That's the generally what both these expansions do.
A lot of stuff.
If you are already overwhelmed with the base game, then I would say probably don't dive into expansions at this point. But if you're just like crushing the base game, like this is too easy, and you really love this game, then go for it.
These add more.
It's harder.
And that is the expansions to Rush MD.
Yes. All right. So we are moving quite along. I believe this is now the fourth game that we're talking about. And this is a smaller expansion, but it is one of the new ones. So I believe if it's not already out, it's going to be releasing at Gen Con. So
yes, this is going to be Sagrada Glory. It's a very tiny box, but a lot of different things in here. This is designed by 2 designers, Daryl Andrews and Adrian Adamescu. And this is an expansion to Sagrada.
Yeah, it's published by Floodgate Games. I believe this is the 3rd in the trilogy. I think it's called the Great Facade Trilogy. I will say we have not played with the other 2. This is the only one that we've tried, so we cannot compare and contrast them.
I think one of the expansions just adds a 5th and 6th player, right? I know there is an expansion that is an extension.
Yes, I don't think that that's a part of the trilogy. Is that not part of it? I think they're all like this.
Smaller ones.
Yeah, like one's called like Passion, and this is Glory. So clearly we haven't played those. Nope. Now, even though this is a very tiny box, this comes with a lot in it. It's a modular expansion, I believe there are 3 new modules plus rival like public objectives. We played with all of them at the same time.
We threw it all in the box. Yeah, we're like, let's just learn it all.
I don't recommend that because Sagrada, if you played Sagrada the base game, in my opinion, whenever I play it at least, it's just so much to kind of keep track of in terms of all you're doing is you're drafting a die. But that decision of which die to draft, you're keeping in mind all these other things, right?
And you're also trying to anticipate, like, okay, this is the first die I'm taking. What the heck am I going to be left with when it comes back to me? Like,
what is the end game going to look like here, right?
Oh boy, yeah. Because you cannot match same colors next to each other or same numbers next to each other on your little grid. So
right. There's also public objectives. You have your private color objective. And then now in this game, there are a few other things to consider. There are, I think they're called prosperity objectives, which are basically a race. So they're a form of public objective, but whoever is able to complete that objective first just takes the card. And they typically score a lot of points.
They do, yeah.
The thing, though, is now the stakes are higher for you to, if you were to make a mistake. Like if you look at your board and you notice that there's a mistake on your board, you're typically with the base game, you just remove one of them so that now your board is legal. If you were to do that, though, with this expansion, you have to discard one of those objectives
Public
that you're
objectives,
able to take.
Yeah, so now like technically you've taken it out of circulation, but all your hard work is now gone. So you might have, in the time when you were placing things, it was legal.
Yeah.
You got that public objective. You are going to score those points. But somewhere in the future, you make a mistake on your board.
Yes.
Now you've lost something that was legal at the time.
Speaking from experience.
I am speaking from experience because I definitely did that.
There's a new dice color. They're gray dice,
Gray ones,
and
yeah.
I think they're called Strife. And I think the other two expansions that are part of this trilogy also include their own type of new colored dice. So in this game, you add a certain number of those gray dice to the bag depending on player count, and there are also these cards that dictate the rules for placing these gray dice. So they're not necessarily a wild color; they're just another color that follows its own placement rules, as well as its own scoring. I think there's a scoring linked to these gray cards. And so that aspect of the expansion is kind of hit or miss for me because there is at least one card in there that made the gray dice really annoying. Right?
Yes, the one that we played with, you could only place a gray die in a location that had a number on your little tableau section.
Yes. So obviously that limits your options quite a bit. And so when we were playing specifically that gameplay of it, the gray dice were just clogging up everything. Like if you looked at the scoreboard at the dice that were not chosen, it was like a bunch of gray.
Yeah, so we'd mentioned that you put 4 of them in the bag, and then also in the expansion with the gray, you will always have at least 1 in the dice pool that you're going to be rolling. So of the 5 that are going to be rolled in a 2-player game, there will always be 1 gray. And then if you happen to pull out one of the 4, gray, then there's more. And so at the very end of the game, when we looked at the 10 rounds, I think like 7 of the rounds, there was a gray die right there.
And I definitely think it has to do with the combination of cards that we were using. They were just a lot less useful in that specific session. But some of the other cards make the gray dice really useful. I think in that gameplay, it's like after a while, you really just need those colored dice. You want the certain colors, right? Especially because you still have those color private objectives, as well as just some of the other modules that we had thrown in there. But that's how the Strife works. And the third thing, which is probably my favorite part of this expansion specifically, are the Flourish cards. And so the Flourish cards are a new type of private objective that is like an abstract objective because it gives you this shape that you have to try to make on your board with specific colors. I think it's only like 2 colors. Like you can choose which colors to use, but they have to be in that exact pattern on your board.
Yeah, and you can only score it once, so you can't make that same pattern multiple times. So like I had like the classic like two stagger 2 Tetris shape, and I was able to do it like right away. And that was like something I really wanted to gun for. So I really like that because that dictates like, okay, I need to make sure I get a green, but oh man, green is not my secret objective, but I really want to like plan towards getting this thing done because you want to try to get that shape done early because as more and more dice start to populate your board,
it's harder.
Getting it done later is going to be almost impossible.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, playing with all of these modules makes that decision space real tough because now you're like, well, I need to put it in the shape. I need the Strife. And, you're just thinking about all these things. So pick and choose which module to play with, but I quite enjoyed Sagrada Glory.
Yeah, it's fun. I like Sagrada as a game in general.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, it's nice to have a little bit something to change it up. So that is Sagrada Glory.
All right, moving right along. I believe this is our second to last expansion for this video and another small box one, but it's for a game that we both really like that we haven't really talked about too much on our channel yet. And it is...
Yes, this is the expansion for Nidavellir. This is Thingvellir, designed by Serge Leger, and it is published by Studio H.
Yes.
Like Monique said, this is an auction game that plays about 45 minutes roughly for 2 to 5 players.
Is that right?
Yeah,
minutes?
that's what it says on the box.
Yeah, it's not long.
Yeah, it's not long.
Before we get into the expansion and the base game, by the way, for anybody going to Gen Con, anybody who's looking for these games, they're selling both the expansion as well as the base game at their booth. There's also a tournament, I believe, going on for Nidavellir.
I think on Saturday at Gen Con.
And I think the tournament tickets are already gone, but they're most likely going to be releasing more. That's kind of like last minute for anybody who kind of dropped. So if you're interested in that, then I would inquire there. And this is the first expansion, but there's actually a second one coming out in November. So for all of you Nidavellir fans, there's more coming. So this expansion is very small. It doesn't add a lot in terms of number of things or rules complexity, but in my opinion, it adds a lot to the gameplay.
Yeah.
So we're a little bit split on this as well. If you've never played Nidavellir, like Naveen was mentioning, it's an auction game, but it has a very fantastical theme.
Yeah, you're trying to like collect different like dwarves and different things like that.
You're trying to attract people from different. We're gonna say they're from different walks of life, but I think they might be from different tribes.
Yeah,
they're different colors of cards, and so it is an auction game where there are 3 phases to the auction each round. And each person has their own player board, as well as these starting 5 standard coins that you use in order to determine who gets to draft from the auction first. That is the auction aspect of it.
Right.
You're bidding with those coins.
You're bidding with your coins, yeah.
But everybody starts with the same value of coins. It just depends on where you place them. And everybody also has a 0 coin that allows you to level up your coins instead of taking a card.
Yeah, so the coins is the currency in the game that you're going to be auctioning with. So everybody has the same set, like Monique said. So you are going to secretly put down one of your coins for each different auction. There's going to be 3 different auctions happening.
The phases.
Phases, yeah. And so you're going to secretly, everyone's going to put down and then reveal. And then whoever has the highest one is going to obviously get the first choice.
Right.
If you play your 0 value coin, then you're going to take the 2 coins that you didn't end up bidding with. You're going to take the sum of those. And then, so let's say I left the 5 and the 4 were not used. Then I'm going to take the sum of those. And now I can level up my 5 to a 9,
number.
The higher of those 2 numbers to now a 9 coin. So now I have a 9 coin in my possession going into the next round.
Yes.
And so you just keep playing like that until the end game is triggered.
And in addition to it being like your bidding power, they're also worth just that
Points.
amount of points at the end of the game. And like, I think it goes up to 25, the
Something
coins,
like that,
and there's only one 25. So there's also that element of, I want to be the first one to get that 25 pointer, right?
Yeah.
And so that's just how the coin mechanism works. But what you're really doing is you're trying to take these cards and you're building out a tableau.
Set collection.
It's set collection, essentially. And each color of card scores differently.
Yes.
And so that's kind of the thing that's neat about that.
Yeah.
There's also these like heroes, which are not a part of the different colors that kind of score differently as well. And there's 2 different ages to it. So the cards kind of level up later on in the game. So it's a really, really neat concept. I feel like it's a pretty unique kind of auction game. And it's one that we both really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, my favorite part is that leveling up of the coins and like when is it the right time? Because it's like, okay, I'm really gunning for greens and those are going to score exponentially. So should I just grab a bunch while I can? But that means if I'm winning these auctions and not using my 0, I'm not leveling up my coins. So later on when the cards come out and I really need something and I want to outbid somebody, I didn't do it because I didn't do it early enough in the game. So like this game really wants you to kind of specialize in one type because you're going to score more as you move along.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think it's a fantastic game.
I will say the one thing that I was kind of like, about the 2 things actually are the gem thing where you have to exchange gems every phase for turn order.
Yes, for turn order.
I wish they did something different because in a 3-player game that got really, really tiring. And after a while, the leveling up of the coins almost felt like, meh, I could do that, but what I really want are these cards. Because the cards are going to score you a lot of points, right? Now with Thingvellir, the expansion, this is, like I said, it's a small expansion, but for me, it makes a big impact because it adds this camp. And so if you are the first person, or if you're the highest bidder during a phase, and you don't want to take one of the cards that are available there, you can instead go to the camp and take a magic artifact, or sometimes recruit a mercenary card. The magic artifacts are highly variable. Some of them are really strong. It really just depends on what you're kind of working towards.
Yeah.
There's a whole slew of them, and there's a player aid that details what all of them do. And in fact, the first time we played this game, we played with the expansion baked in. And I really just thought that was all just one game. It just felt so naturally a part of it.
Yeah, the base game plus this was taught to us all at one time.
Yeah.
So for us, it's like it's kind of now hard to go back and just like
remove.
pull out the elements that are the expansion and the base game. It's kind of like role player. Role player for me was taught with the expansion.
Yeah.
And so now it's like hard to just be like only base. It's all one game for me.
Yeah, like I'm sure Nidavellir is perfectly great without Thingvellir. But for me, it just adds that extra layer of like, well, I really don't need these cards here, but those cards at the camp are really cool. Like some of them are really, really cool.
I will say in our play, that first play, I just completely ignored Thingvellir. Completely ignored it. And I just went base game and I won by a pretty decent margin.
Yeah, he crushed. So maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Because I really, really like the camp and I took a bunch of those cards and I got crushed.
I think it was,
played
that particular one was a 3-player game and I played and I was gunning for the ones that scored exponentially. So as I got more and more, it just got sweeter and sweeter. And I was able to build up my coin so I can kind of bully and just be like, well, I'm taking it. Like, even though you want it like to stop me, it's mine. And so, because I think you might have been getting distracted by some of the things.
Totally.
But I think you were probably like, it's an expansion. I'm going expansion. I'm going to try it out.
The cards sound so nice.
They do.
And you want to be the one to get, you have to be the person who bids the highest in order to be eligible to take the cards from the camp. And so it makes you feel like, oh, I'm in this like lucky position, like it's now or never,
Yeah,
right? Because like,
right.
what if somebody else bids higher on the next phase and they take
FOMO.
the card that I want?
Yep.
So I definitely window shopped a little bit too much, right? So you still have to play the game strategically to do well with the expansion included.
Yeah.
But I liked it.
Yeah,
Liked
we were
it a
just
lot.
pushing buttons.
So anyway, that is Thingvellir,
Thingvellir.
expansion to Nidavellir.
I keep wanting to say Thingvellir.
There's no A.
Thingvellir.
All right, so last expansion of the day,
Mm-hmm.
and this is another new one. So this is a highly anticipated one, actually, and it's releasing at Gen Con, I believe. So it's not quite out yet.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it is...
Yes, it's the expansion for the Red Cathedral. This is the Contractors expansion. It's designed by two different designers, Isra C and Shay S, and it's published by Nidavellir. Monique and I have covered the base game before on the channel. We did a playthrough of it.
We did a playthrough of it.
I think we made a mistake in endgame scoring, which we have added to the description below. So if you are interested in checking that game out, make sure you read that
in
description because that is something to keep track of.
And
this happens to be the most thumbed up thing coming out at Gen Con 2022, by the way. If you've gone
according to the
BGG
Gen Con
preview list, this has the most thumbs. So the most interest, I guess.
Definitely highly anticipated expansion. And so if you're not familiar with what this expansion adds, it adds two new main aspects. There are, of course, Contractors, as the title suggests, and there are also new guild cards.
Right.
So the Contractors adds a new sideboard to the game that has locations on it. And so you set up the sideboard, you put some cities on there, and it's all detailed in the setup
rulebook,
instructions. But the cities that you don't use are now placed at the top of each of the columns of the cathedral.
Yep.
This actually adds a new action type, which is going to that board with a contractor to gain benefits. Or you get a bonus tile from the actual contractor board that you now place on your main board that is associated with the black die. And so those bonus tokens, by the way, are called specialist tiles. And again, you place them on your player board. When you use the black die when taking a resource, then you can activate that bonus that's on your specialist tile. And that's a one-time use, one time in the entire game, unlike the other kind of bonus chits that you pick up for the other dice.
Right.
But once you do use it, you flip over the specialist tile and it shows one of 6 tools. And so at the end of the game, you're going to get extra prestige points depending on, it's set collection essentially.
Yeah.
How many different tools you have in your possession.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit more to it than that in terms of the rules for sending contractors out and such. But that is the main concept. In terms of the city tokens that are above each column of the cathedral, when a column of the cathedral gets completed, then that city token goes to that extra map board and it closes that city.
Yeah.
So now you can no longer go there, place your contractors there to take those specialist tiles. And it also causes you to score points, to score recognition points. Each player will score points depending on how many banners were in that column that just got completed. So it does add this like extra layer of scoring that wasn't a part of the base game.
And timing also, because like obviously like in the base game, you're still concerned about somebody building above you before you can complete, which is not that big of a penalty, but like you want to be sure that you're contributing all those banners to that column so that when it scores, you can score a multiplier.
Yeah, so the base game is a game that's all about timing, and the expansion is no exception. For me, the Contractors aspect of this expansion is just like, it's okay. Like I could live without it, you know?
Yeah, sure. Take
How
it or
do you
leave it.
feel?
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, if you've played out the base game, then I think it adds a nice little change of pace. I always like games that have like a little map for some reason.
Yeah.
And so adding that, I'm excited to explore it more, especially at higher player counts.
Yeah, I do think that it potentially adds a lot more to your strategy because of those specialist tiles. You just have to keep track of, the base game had already all these like rules for like when you get a resource, you have to move the die, roll them all. It's just like another layer of those rules.
Yeah, more to keep track of.
More to keep track of. Yeah. But if you are like really solid on the rules of the base game and like you said, just want a little bit more, then the Contractors aspect of this is probably pretty fun. My favorite aspect of this expansion, which in my opinion is like the best part, are the guild cards.
Yeah.
This game comes with 10 new guilds. And each guild has, I think, like 3 different options for cards. Like I think the base game came with like 4 guilds.
4 times 3 per. So
this is like 2.5x that, right? So Each guild, by the way, adds it's almost like a mini expansion because like they add a new
flavor,
a new mechanic to the game. Like one guild adds diamonds, which are a new wild resource, and you only utilize the diamonds if you're including that guild.
Another guild adds a foreman who basically has a little piece that walks from tower to tower and kind of evaluates and awards and penalizes depending on different circumstances. So there's a ton of different ones in this, like Monique was saying.
Yeah, so you can mix and match the guilds that you want to use and basically cater what kind of experience you want from this game. So I really think that the guilds alone, if you love the Red Cathedral, get this expansion for those guilds.
Yeah, it's nice. So that is the expansion to the Red Cathedral, Contractors.
Coming out soon. All right, there you have it. That was a lot of expansions.
A lot of expansions,
We've been sitting on a lot of those for a while now, but it feels good to be able to talk about them.
Yes.
If you've played any of these expansions before and you have thoughts, we would love to hear them. Please leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you liked them, you didn't like them, we'd love to hear from you.
Yep. Thank you all so much for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more like this in the future, please consider subscribing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.